Hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this series of Women Making an Impact Live. I'm so excited to share today's conversation with you. But before I do that, I just want to give you a little bit as to what the goal is of this series. The goal of Women Making an Impact is to provide you with the tools, the resources, and the strategy that you need to build your confidence, to amplify your voice, to know your worth, and to dress like the leader that you're becoming. If you're watching live, say hi in the comments. If you're watching the replay, let me know that you're watching. I'll be taking your questions along the way, so be sure to drop those in the comments. I am Solia Roberts, founder and image coach here at Style to Impact. And my guest today is the amazing, I have to say it like drum roll, the amazing Jasmine Escalera. Jasmine is a career and confidence coach. Welcome, welcome, Jasmine. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am so thrilled to be here. I follow you on LinkedIn. That's how we connected. And I absolutely love everything that you do. Every time I see you put out an outfit, I'm like, yes, power outfit. I want it now. So
Ah,
I'm so excited for this.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much for, saying yes, because you're also one of those women that I follow on LinkedIn as well, right? I know we're from different corners of the world, but it's so great to connect with women that are showing up for themselves, right? They're showing up in a powerful and confident way and ensuring that we are empowering other women around us. And I think for me, that brings me so much joy to be able to connect with you today. But before we dive into this conversation, I want to say, and I want everyone listening, watching right now in the comments to give a huge congratulations to you because you have taken on the role of being a full time entrepreneur.
Yes.
You bet on yourself and you're saying, yes to me. Yes, I'm showing up. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I love how you said you're betting on yourself because that was exactly the feeling that made me make the leap was I am betting on myself, I'm betting on my joy, I'm betting on my happiness, and I also want to claim to the world that I have my own back, right? Like I think when we stop ourselves from doing the things that we really feel we want to do, it's fear, but it's also, can I really do this? Can I really make this happen? And for me, I had to take the leap because I couldn't keep saying to myself, I can do this, I can do this, I can make it happen. I really needed to move outside of just the thought and the affirmations and the speaking and into the action.
Yeah.
And so much of confidence building is really that it's building the belief system so that you can take action even when the fear is still there. So I just had to bet on myself and go for it, and I'm so excited that I did. It's not that it's not scary. Like even today I was just having a conversation with my business bestie, and I was like, I am scared AF, like if this is actually going to work, but I'm going for it.
I I know exactly what you mean. And just having there's one thing to say that you want to do it, right? Oh, I
Mhm.
want to do this, I want to do that. But then there's the other thing to actually like that
Yeah.
first step. That's always the most jarring one. Is like, okay, you take the first step, okay, you got that out of the way, and then you're like, okay, I need to take a second step. And within those moments of stepping forward, you still have that self doubt. You're still thinking that you're not
Mhm.
capable. You're still thinking that something is going to crash and burn, and
Yeah.
you're not you're not in a position to do it. I shared on LinkedIn a few days ago where I talked about creating my own yes after getting so many
Mm.
no's, right? Applying for different positions and living in a new country and not having a network and not having a connection, not having friends, and all the no's were like piling up. And it's like, okay, am I gonna sit down and make this defeat me? Because it was draining. It was taking a lot out of me getting those no's. I was like, no, I need to create my own yes, which I borrowed from Issa Rae. So it wasn't
Yes,
exactly mine,
I love
but it
her.
was like it was motivation to like really say, yeah,
Mhm.
create my own yes. But it is not always like we have these stories where we're saying to ourselves, okay, I'm tired of hearing no's. For me, it was being tired of hearing no's and being tired of being defeated. For you, it's like, okay, I'm showing up for myself. I'm going to bet on myself,
Yes.
right? But there's so many women, specifically, I want to talk to the women because those are the, my my clients. Women are the ones that I
Mhm.
speak to. I don't know if you just work with women only or you just work with actually no, I know that you work with women of color.
Yes, women of color. I'm all about empowering my ladies.
Yeah, I am so, and I'm so, and that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with you, right? Because there's one thing to try and empower the masses, but there's another
Mhm.
thing to really empower the women that we connect so much with. And one of the things that I find that I've connected with you on, like you talk about growing up in the projects in
Mhm.
Brooklyn and what that experience was like. And for me, it's like where I grew up, as I like to say, and I joke about it all the time, like I've been an immigrant for most of my life. I've
Mhm.
lived in the country that I born in, which is Guyana, and then I moved to Antigua, and then I'm now in the
Oh,
US.
wow.
But growing up, my background, if we talk about how poor I was, like I think we'd be crying a little bit, right? When
Mhm.
I think about what that growing up in that surrounding meant for me in terms of my confidence, I can honestly tell you I don't ever recall being that confident child. Like, I don't
Mhm.
ever recall going, yes, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. Do you find that your environment and growing up in the projects and growing up with your family and having that community around you kind of
Mhm.
instills certain things in you in terms of your confidence, or was it something that you had to go outside of your community to find?
Yeah, I love that question because for me, I had the experience where growing up around, Black and brown faces in my community with people who were experiencing the same things as my family were, same stressors, same excitement, same joys, actually helped me to build my confidence. I think that growing up in the projects, it was almost kind of like growing up in a secluded gated community because especially in the 80s and 90s there was nobody was coming into the projects unless you lived there, right? So
Yeah.
everyone knew each other, everyone supported one another, and it was almost kind of like this giant extended family, right? We all knew who each other were. I remember going out in the summer and hanging out with all of my friends, and even if my parents weren't around, there were parents around. So we were
Yeah.
always taken care of, we were always looked after. And in my community, that level of support when it came to me, because I was the bookworm and I wanted to go to school all the time, like even in the summer, I was like, when is school coming back? I was known as that person who was like, gonna make it, and so there was always a lot of rallying behind me. I felt, and that helped to boost my positivity around how I was going to, go out into the world. It definitely helped boost my confidence. I felt like a very confident woman. And then I stepped out into the real world and everything changed because I wasn't prepared for that transition. So, what my community did was something beautiful. They created a confident, capable woman, but no one that I had been around, was going to step into corporate America. No one that I had been around was going to go to college and get their PhD. So, as much as they could boost my confidence and my self esteem and my vision of me, they couldn't help me with those pieces of the puzzle. So I did feel like I had built this level of confidence and capability in my community when I was around my community, but that really started to break down tremendously when I stepped out into the real world and realized and recognized that other people's experiences were not the same as my experiences. Other people's education was very different than the education I received having gone to, just public school, Department of Education. So I started to build a lot of doubt and limiting beliefs around my capabilities and my confidence when I made that transition to being around my community and people who look like me, who have the same story, to being around individuals who simply did not and did not have the same story. And so being a woman of color in STEM, like that transition was incredibly jarring for me. And it was hard for me to maneuver early on in my career.
Wow, that is incredible, because we families tend to do that, right? We create this nice bubble that we,
Hmm.
protect, where we protect each other, where we nurture each other, but then there's always that moment when have to step out into the world, and it's like what we call being sheltered, right? They
Yeah.
created such a sheltered life for you and such a protective space so that you can grow and thrive in. But there wasn't that, okay, so when you go out in the world, these are some of the expectations and these are some of the things that you will
Hmm.
encounter. How would you say that what was like the first thing you did when you stepped out in that space and stepped out on your own to be able to say, okay, yes, my background is different, yes, my the colleges and everything that I've attended are different, but I am Jasmine. I'm my own person. There are certain
Hmm.
things that I've established for myself that I can put out into the world. What was that one thing that kind of like triggered that moment for you?
Yeah, so I think the thing that helped me the most, to be 100% honest, and I tell people this all the time, is recreating community. So I had to find my community every single place that I went and every place that I transitioned to in my career. So I think it's important to always step outside of your bubble, but I also think that you achieve your highest level of self when you have a solid foundation. So to me, solid foundation always meant finding my community, finding the people that I resonated with most, finding people who allowed me to be myself. So, talking about growing up in the projects and a lot of the great things that happened, but also a lot of the really terrible things that
Yeah.
happened in my childhood, I wanted to be able to freely express that and be authentic around that. And in many spaces, I actually did not even want to tell people I grew up in the projects, because then I became a token. It was like, oh, you're the brown girl who grew up in the projects and look what you did. You made it.
Yeah.
Like it just felt so icky to have that put on me. So the first things that I did when I was recognizing that I wasn't feeling my most confident, when I wasn't in spaces where I felt the most accepted, was to really try to reclaim that sense of community, that sense of, I'm around people who I can be my most authentic self with, so that that could lay the foundation so that I could then be that highest version of myself in other spaces. If I didn't have that foundation, I don't think I would have been able to achieve that. So that was my foundation, but I think everyone's foundation can be different. So it's a matter of laying down what is the foundation that can help you become and be your highest self, and thinking about what that is. And if you're feeling like you're shaky, you're on shaky ground, then you got to go back to that space. So that's personally what I did. So when I started college, it meant really finding other women of color, other women who were in STEM, who could understand the journey that we were all going on with each other. I did the same thing when I went to Yale, which is such a prestigious space to be in. It messes with your head so much. I wanted to find that community again. Like I wanted to be in those spaces where I could support people, they could support me, and I could be my most best self.
That is that for me, I think that's so important, right? It's that
Mhm.
sometimes when we start to second guess ourselves, sometimes when we feel as though we're not on equal footing as everyone else around us, and it's finding your community. And I think that's so
Mhm.
important, because when you can identify with others or connect with others around you, it makes things so much easier. Like I remember my first corporate job, like
Mhm.
when I got out of college, I got like my neighbor was working at this in this office space, and she kind of like, oh, I wanted something to do, because I just came out of college. I didn't know what, didn't have one of those fancy degrees. I grew up, went to a 2-year college. So it was like, oh, I needed something to do until I can find a job. So I was working in the office, and then one day I was like, okay, this is not going to work for me because of things that I wanted to do. I started to see the world a little bit, and I wanted
Mhm.
to do some other things. So my first corporate job, and I call it my official job, was working in the bank as a teller. And I remember walking in there the first day and being introduced to my colleagues, and I'm listening to, okay, this person is just here, been here for 2 years, and they're going off to this college, you're just here to do this. And I kind of hearing all these stories, and it's like, I am the newbie in the group, right?
Mhm.
And here's it, I'm stepping into this world where I don't have anyone that can connect on this level. Like, there was no one in my family who worked a corporate job. I had no friends who worked a corporate job. So here's it, I'm stepping into this space with some of the, my colleagues, I knew them from a distance, but didn't really know them. And there was that moment where I felt like, okay, how am I going to fit in? And at the same time, I was like, but
Mhm.
I don't want to be the newbie who is always known as the newbie, where everyone is looking at like, okay, yeah, you're going to be the one lagging behind. And I think one of the things that worked for me is, instead of looking at the department as there's no one like me in this space, I kind of stepped out of the department and see who's
Mhm.
new in the organization. Like, who's
Yeah.
that new person who's going through like the same, like, trying to build your confidence, trying to feel your place within the organization. And I connected with someone in a different department. And that kind of like helped me with, okay, so I belong in this space. How do I show up as my most confident self? How do I build my credibility to say, hey, this is where I belong? So I think it's so
Mhm.
important that we establish communities and really connect with persons who share similar stories with us. And that at the same time, you're not burdened trying to connect with someone who's not necessarily sharing the same story as you. So
Yeah.
I think that's such a great point that you make. Before we go on, I want to say thank you to Carl, who is, joining and supporting us. I so appreciate you joining, Carl. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, and that's what community is, right? Because when we have a
Mhm.
community around us, whether or not it's one person or several persons, um, you know, championing us along the way and cheering us along the way, it does give us that confidence to show up for ourselves and show up for, the work and the
Yeah.
spaces that we're in. So I want to talk about a little bit, because we're talking about how to own your confidence at work, right? and
Mhm.
and with COVID happening, and so many women, we're looking at what we call in the great resignation, and women losing their position and places in the workplace. There's some women right now who, whether or not they're deciding that, okay, I'm going to entrepreneurship for myself full time and bet on myself, or I'm going to change jobs. I'm going to look at different institutions that really align with my goals and my values. What is something that you like, one advice you would give to those women who are transitioning into the workplace now? Maybe they've been out of work for a while,
Mhm.
right? And now they're going back into the workplace, but unsure of themselves. Like, what would be one advice you will give to that woman who's saying, I want to get back, but I'm not sure of my skills. I'm not sure about my position and place in this space.
Yeah, there's a few different things I would mention actually. The first thing I would mention for sure is to get connected with your unique value. And so what you contribute and provide to the workplace that no one else contributes or provides. And
Yeah.
there's a sprinkle of different things in that. So we always talk about our strengths, right? I'm a firm believer in when you work in your strengths, you work in your power. So know what you're really good at doing and make sure that that's what you're leading with. You're leading with those strengths. I would also say like know what skills you're really good at and lean with those as well. But also know what you're interested in learning more about, what you're interested in doing. And so focusing on your strengths, your skills, and your interests will give you the opportunity to seriously work within your power, but also work within the things that bring you joy and excitement, because your strengths are definitely what you're great at, but your interests can almost sort of be those things that can actually sprinkle in the joy and the excitement because it's something that brings interest to you, right? I
Yeah.
want to know more, I want to grow within it. So I would say definitely get very clear on what you are good at. That's the the one very sort of solid component or like practical component of your unique value. But the other thing I would say, you know, working with women of color, I always tell them too, your unique value is your strengths, your skills, your interests, blah, blah, blah. But your unique value is also your story, your culture, your background, right? So, me growing up in the projects, I say that what that has taught me is resilience and determination.
Yeah.
So, growing up in that environment, I had to be extremely resilient. I had to be extremely determined and also really good at solving problems because, you know, when you grow up poor, you have
Yeah.
to figure it out. Like, you
Yep.
just have to figure it out.
Yep.
So I would say resilience, determination, and problem solving are like the things that my background, my culture, my identity have truly taught me that that's a unique contribution that I bring to the workplace. So I would say there's the practical piece of know your strengths, know your skills, know your interests. That's what can connect you every single day to doing great at work, to having joy at work, but also think about like what is it that just me being this woman having my story, having my journey, what is the unique contribution I can bring into the workplace by just being me? Because no one else can ever take that away from you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say in terms of that confidence piece is like, you got to work on what's going on up here. There are so
Absolutely.
many times when, you know, I have clients and I talk to clients and like their mindset is one of the biggest contributors to why they are stuck, not making moves, not feeling happy at work. And it all stems to like, you know, I feel like I have to do more, or I have to achieve more, or I have to be better. And that contributes to you just doing more work without being strategic around the work that you need to be doing to advance or achieve in your career. So, the other thing I would say is really get clear around what you're thinking about yourself, what you think about your environment, and how those particular things are contributing to how you're showing up or not showing up in the way that you would like to at work. So that's what I would say to really dig into would be those two major things.
Goosebumps, goosebumps. Like, can I tell you outside of like a side note, like just listening to you speak, like it's I don't know if the listeners are getting the same sense. Like you're like this. Oh my gosh, speak, Jasmine, speak to me, speak, because you're so not only like eloquent, but the way you speak just resonates and touches your soul. And I think that's so important when we're talking about empowering women. We're talking about and sharing our stories. And I totally agree with what you said. Sharing your story and knowing your story, it definitely like pulling parts out of that. Like, how did you grow up? What are some of the things that you had to do? And how can you
Mhm.
bring that into the workplace? Resilience, yeah. When you grow up poor, you have to,
Yeah.
you have to be resilient. When you grow up poor, you have to problem solve. And when you grow up poor, you kind of like, not to say if you don't, maybe you don't have it, but there's a different frame of mind that you go into things at. You're a little bit more, at least from me, you always want to help. You always come from that
Mhm.
position of service. I want to help someone. And I think just from my exam, being able to help, being able to say to someone, okay, I work with my clients, we're talking about image coaching, we're talking about showing up, wearing things and feeling confident, not only in yourself, but on the outside. But it comes from that place of always wanting to help someone move forward, because I knew
Mhm.
what that was like when someone said to me, hey, do this so that you can move forward, and what that meant for me and how that built my confidence to say, okay, yes, I can do this. So I think it's so important, as you said, it's not just a mindset, but just kind of like looking at your story, looking at your lifestyle and saying, what are some of the things that I can tap into, right?
Yeah.
Because when we talk about confidence, there is, yes, stepping out of your comfort zone, there is also learning from your mistakes. But how can you really take your story and pull certain aspects of your, I think I saw this in something where they talked about making your struggles your success story or something like that. I think
Yes, I love that.
was it, but that's what it is, right? And I think from that boosts your confidence in that. So when you show up in that workplace, you're saying, okay, I may not look or have the same story as everyone else, but there's a uniqueness to my story.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I
So
love
I
that. It is there is such a uniqueness and beauty to your story. And I love that concept of, your struggle can be a part of the success, because I truly believe that it is. It's you go through I'm a firm believer in that you go through things as an opportunity to learn. And it may not seem like that when you're
no,
going through
no,
it.
it never seems like a learning experience when you're going through it
It's,
now.
it's yeah, I've gone through some things where I'm like, what is the lesson here? Like
Yeah,
it
been there, done that.
it can feel kind of like what the hell, but I do truly believe that that struggle does provide you with some learning experience and opportunity or growth. So I love how you said that, the struggle and the story. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's something I'm tapping into. And like, even throughout my career as working, I remember like my last job, I worked in a wealth management company that most of our clients spoke a foreign language,
Mhm.
Italian, Spanish, French. I do not speak a foreign language. The only language I know
Mhm.
is English. And it was when I thought about, first of all, how did I get this job? Like I was the executive assistant with the CEO. But when I got in there, I was like, I'm not gonna let that limit me, from
Mhm.
doing my job. It's like it's an experience. It was something new. I got to, engross myself in a different culture, in a different atmosphere, and kind of like learning how
Mhm.
that percentage of the population works and operate. But I think one of the takeaways from that for me, it's like your background and the things that we think are limitations shouldn't limit us from the experiences and the things that we do and
Yes, I
how
love
we
that.
show up and how
Mhm.
we show up, because I think it's so important that you may not, and women tend to do that. We tend to do that. We look at the qualifications and we say, oh no, I don't have that one thing.
Mhm.
So we kind of step back and not apply for it, or we say, this is not the opportunity for me. Whereas if you put yourself out there, you never know what can happen, because those opportunities that you do say yes to that may seem outside of your wheelhouse are the opportunities that actually allow you to build your confidence.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I, like even that job, I remember my boss, one of the takeaways that I always, one of the things that I took away from that job from my boss, that he would say, you don't have to know exactly what you're doing. You just need to be confident in the way you say it, the
Yeah.
way you look, and people will automatically assume you know exactly what you're talking about. Like there's so many times he'll be like, I have no idea how we're doing that. But just listening to the way he spoke to the client is like, yes, sound confident, be confident, and you will be able to do it. It's like
Yeah.
no questions asked.
I love that, because when we think about confidence, we almost sort of feel like we have to get to a certain point before we are confident. But how much of that can you just create that belief system of, I may not have all of the ideas, I may not have all the confidence, my confidence may not be up here, but I'm still going to go for it anyway. And I'm still going to have that belief behind myself that I'll figure it out, that it'll work out.
Yeah.
So, how much of confidence can just be you trying, or just be you putting yourself out there and just acknowledging that, you may not feel the most confident, but you're going to do it anyway, right? Like that's so I find that like confidence really, to me, is about knowing yourself. It is about really building that best mindset possible, but then it also is just about like doing the thing, right? You
Yes.
just have to go and do the thing, and have that belief in yourself that, like, if I fail, it doesn't mean anything about me. I'll learn from the process. And when I succeed, it's because I built the belief systems around myself that that thing was achievable and obtainable for me. So I almost sort of think it's like, just go out there and do it and say it and go for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know we're saying it, and some, some persons are listening right now, and they're like, "Uh-huh, easier said than done,"
Yes,
right?
it is.
Easier said than done. I mean, we both have our own experiences that we would have gone through. Like, yeah, it sounds easy, but I think the easiest thing that you can do is not do something for yourself, right?
Mhm.
And
Oh
when you
yeah.
make that decision to say yes, I am going to do, I am going to show up.
Mhm.
I may be the only woman in this establishment. I may be the only woman at this level, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to
Yeah.
make sure that I'm asking all the questions possible. I'm going to make sure that I'm, looking around to see who are some of the leaders that I want to connect with. I'm going to look around and say, hey, what are some of the mistakes that I've made and what have I learned from these mistakes, right? It's saying
Mhm.
yes to all of that is what helps to build your confidence, not only in your business, but in your career as well.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I love that. I love how you said the easiest thing you can do is just nothing.
Yeah,
And
it
it's
is.
it's
It is.
it's so true. It's like the easiest thing you can do is do nothing. Like don't change anything, don't work on it, and it will be easy. It
Yeah,
just won't be the outcome that you want. And so you have to
exactly.
make that choice. Do I make the choice between easy or do I make the choice to actually have the life that I want? And so that's so beautiful. Oh my God.
Exactly. And the life that you want, you realize that, okay, I have to do some work. I have to change my mindset. I have to change the way I
Mhm.
show up. So there's certain things that you'll have to do. But once you make that decision to say yes to yourself, once you make that decision to bet on yourself, it doesn't have to be starting a business. It can be, changing careers, making the acts for what you are worth, ensuring that you're speaking up. There's so much power in that, and from that in itself, it gives you the confidence that you need, right? So
Yeah.
thank you. I mean, this has been amazing. I can talk to you like
Yes.
all day. Like I can talk to you like all day. As I said, just being in your space and just your energy and just your positivity has been so great that I know, yeah, it's not possible to have a conversation with you all day because we're both, running businesses that we need to to help
Thank
other
you.
women. So what would you say, how can viewers reach you? And as we wrap up, like what's that one or two pieces of advice that you want to leave with the audience today as they think about owning and really showing up as their most powerful and confident self within the workspaces? What is that advice?
Yeah, I think, in terms of advice, like I got tripped up a lot as I mentioned like early in my career. I have talked about the fact that I tried to conform and code switch and none of it worked. Like none of it worked. I cannot be a cisgender white man. I cannot, there's just certain things that I cannot do.
Yeah.
So for me, the confidence came when I just accepted who I was and started to love myself completely for the person that I was. And it also came from reconnecting back to when I was my most confident self. And that was not in my career, that was when I was in my community and trying to understand what contributed to that feeling of confidence and how I could recreate it in the spaces and settings that I was in. So, if you want to work on being your most confident self, love yourself. And I know that sounds easy too. Loving ourselves can be really hard, but it
Yeah.
also comes from identifying those moments when you were your most confident self and recreating that in the space that you're in now. And then in terms of getting a hold of me, I'm on LinkedIn, Jasmine Escalera, and I'm also on Instagram at Jasmine Escalera Coaching. And I would love to discuss this topic of confidence in the workplace with you further. So DM me.
Awesome, awesome. I love what you said. There's just loving yourself, right? That is where it all
Mhm.
starts. We have to love ourselves, regardless of what other people may say about us or how we may judge ourselves or compare ourselves
Mhm.
to others. It's like really loving yourself from the inside. Like, who am
Yeah.
I from the inside? And then eventually, what you find will happen that you will show up just the way you feel on the inside, on the outside. So I appreciate you sharing that, Jasmine. This has been such an honor.
Thank you.
It's I, like I absolutely appreciate you coming on here and sharing your wisdom and connecting and bringing your unique, stylish self to this space, and sharing, as I've said before, one of the things that I appreciate with you, and I used you as an example as to how you can show up being confident, being comfortable, but still being able to make that impact with your presentation and the way that your appearance in itself, right? So you don't
Mhm.
have to do a lot, ladies. Look at Jasmine. She's a perfect example of comfy, fashionable.
That's right. I'm literally wearing jeans under right now.
Exactly. It's comfortable, but it does have a lot of your personality coming out. A lot that, every day you get up, I'm sure it's not like, oh my gosh, what do I do? It's like a natural uniform that's so impactful and so easy for you
Yeah,
to put together. So you are a perfect example of
thank
that
you.
woman stepping out and really ensuring that her appearance, her voice, and her message is being heard and being received by all. So I appreciate you being here
Thank
with
you
me
so
today.
much.
And as we wrap up today, if you've been following me, the start of January 2021, I said it is the year of my yes. It's the year of yes. It's the year that I say yes to everything that uplifts, fulfills, and empower me not only to go on this path that I'm on, but also to uplift other women. So I want to ask you, the audience, everyone that's listening, what are you saying yes to? What is something that you need to say yes to for yourself? Because saying yes to yourself is how you are able to build that confidence to show up
Mm.
for yourself, to show up in the workplace, to show up in your business. So let me know in the comments, what are you saying yes to? Thank you all for listening. If we haven't connected as yet, I hang out here on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube, and I'm on Instagram. You can find me under the hashtag Style to Impact. Of course, you can find me there as well, as Solita Roberts on LinkedIn. It would mean a lot as well to hear from you. Like, what are some of the takeaways that you're having from these conversations? You've been such an integral part of it, and having guests like Jasmine, who I appreciate so much for being here, has been an awesome opportunity. So let us know, what are some of the takeaways that you receive from these conversations. And until next time, it's great connecting with all of you. And Jasmine, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love your year of yes. And I see Cassandra says yes to freedom for me. I
Oh,
agree with that
love
one.
that. Love that. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Let's continue the year of yes. There's still a couple of months we have in the year, and it's not just the year, but just saying yes to you throughout your entire life.
Mhm.
So thanks again for connecting. Appreciate all of you being here. Until next
Thank
time.
you.